Hello everybody, welcome back to LPS Series 101, where I share my tips and tricks on creating an LPS series start to finish. Today we are going to be talking about plot, how to create an interesting plot, how to write your story, and everything in between. So if you're interested, go ahead and subscribe, and let's just hop right into it. So after you found your initial idea that we talked about in the last episode, you're ready to start writing your plot. But don't worry, I'm gonna walk you through exactly how to do this and not get lost on the way. So almost every story is created with the 5 story beats in mind, which are the intro and the setup, the inciting incident, the rising action, and the low point, the climax, and the resolution. Now this is a lot of big words, I'm gonna explain exactly what they mean in a minute. In this stage, you can get a general idea of what your story's beginning, end, and middle is going to be. You don't need to figure out everything just yet. I am gonna say that the main thing about a plot is usually the main character or a character wanting to get something and having obstacles along the way. This is the main thing that drives a plot. Now, your plot can be character driven, meaning your characters move the story forward, or it can be story driven, which means things that are out of the character's control are progressing the story. The point is, your story needs to move. It cannot stay in the same place. Which brings me to the story beats. I mentioned earlier that each story is built off of a few story beats. The intro and the setup are your first impressions. This is where you introduce your characters, your story, where they are, who the story follows, everything like that. This is generally around the first episode and the second episode, just the introduction to your world. This can include showing your characters' daily lives, how their current day-to-day life looks like, what their reality looks like, because this is all gonna change in the next stage, which is the inciting incident. The inciting incident is the thing that makes your character start their journey. I like explaining this with examples, so let's take for example the movie Moana. It begins with Moana's introduction to the story, which is just how the island looks like, what the people are doing, what their daily lives look like, the main character Moana's frustration with not being able to leave the island, which is already giving us some sparks of how her story is going to progress, like what she wants. The inciting incident in the story is Moana's grandma's death. It has to be something that matters enough for the characters, so they start acting, taking action. Now, after they've decided to start their journey, the rising action comes along. The rising action is the longest part. It's just the middle of your story. So, for example, let's take Moana again. After she decides that she's going to leave the island the night her grandmother died, this is where the middle of the story starts, where she's on the boat. So the rising action is basically where the middle of your story takes place. Most of the events are going to happen here. This is where most of the meat of your story is going to be. This part is the most fun because you can write literally everything you want. You don't have to be super precise about it yet. You can just write your story. But at some point, you're gonna reach the next stage, which is the low point. Now, a low point in the story is where everything falls apart. A big failure has to come along to get your character, like, really down in the dumps. Your character has to attempt to do something and fail tremendously, and you need to break them in this stage of the story. A lot of people bring the stage too close to the beginning. Please don't do that. Do it when the audience is already related to the characters, they love them, they want to see them succeed, and then boom, you bring them down. So this stage is very important because you're gonna build the character up in the next stage, which is the climax. After your character suffered in the low point, you're gonna start preparing them for the climax, the big juicy fight of the story, which usually takes place close to the end. This is where all the drama takes place, everything goes down. It can be a big fight, anything that is really dramatic, and all the stakes are high. Everything is like leading up to this moment. The climax usually comes close to the end, which is why right after the climax we have the resolution, which is basically the end, where you decide how your series is going to end. Now you can have an open ending if you want another season. You can have a sort of a vague ending, which is my favorite, but you don't have to do this. You can have a very closed ending, like the series is gone, like I'm done. You can do whatever you want, which is the beautiful part about LPS series. You can just do whatever you want, and it's all for fun. This might have sounded like there's a lot of rules to making your series, but I promise you that the most important thing about LPS series is that you have fun creating them and that you have your passion with you, because if you don't, What's the point? I'm just trying to help you find useful tools to elevate your series, pepper in some cinematography rules and stuff that can really help you write and produce. So these were all the story structures. I personally like keeping a Google Doc with a list of them that I can just fill in with my plot. Remember, this is still a stage where you can change whatever you want, be open to new ideas. If you see a plot line or think about a plotline that is suddenly like better than what you had, add it to the list. This is an open, very open process. And of course, just like last time, I encourage you to write everything down. Even if it seems like a stupid idea, later you're gonna look at it and suddenly love the fact that you wrote it down. So don't be afraid to change it up. You're still not committed to anything. Have fun. So this was writing a story and a plot for your LPS series. If you have any questions, I would love to answer you in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day.